When you look at Sonic the Hedgehog games, it's super easy to criticize and talk down on them, because most games in this series aren't exactly perfect. And while some games completely deserve the hate, a lot of them really don't, and there's still something to like even in the darkest of Sonic's chapters. That's why today, we're taking a look at the best aspect of every mainline Sonic game. Sonic the Hedgehog 1991, making you earn speed. The game that kickstarted the entire series isn't phenomenal by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an above average game for the time and stands out from the rest of Sonic's classic lineup pretty well. Why is that? Well, because there's no side characters to clutter things up, a balance of high-speed, momentum-based levels, and ridiculously slow platforming levels, and is the only game in the entire main Sonic series to not feature a spin dash or boost mechanic. Instead, you have to gradually gain speed by running for a prolonged period of time. You can't just stop to wind up and zoom ahead. It forces you to actually work to build up speed, which makes it a less central part of the gameplay, yes, but provides a super unique way of rewarding the player that no Sonic game has really done since. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Consistent Speed. Where the first game alternates between being wicked fast and this one commits to letting Sonic be Sonic. And if you learn your way through a level, almost nothing slows you down at all. It works the platforming elements much more naturally into the stage, and doesn't halt your progress to make you wait for timed obstacles. Instead, if you fuck up, you go down to the slower, more challenging platforming route. But if you react fast enough, you can bypass just about all of it and keep up a consistent tempo. And it does so better than any of the other 2D games. Sonic CD, Time Travel. Okay, I know this one's pretty obvious, but I'd be stupid not to call it out here. If Sonic runs through a past, present, or future sign and maintains top speed for long enough, he can warp to a version of that level from a different time period, which makes the scenery either look super prehistoric and natural, or super dystopian and polluted. It's a really cool gimmick to give each level more depth, and something similar to this in a 3D game would be fucking awesome. Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Knuckles. Again, another really obvious one, but I don't care. Knuckles is the first formidable adversary to Sonic, not just being an overweight doctor that likes robots. He's strong, he's driven, and he doesn't quit. Now who does that sound like? Him being tricked by Eggman and later siding with Team Sonic to help stop him was the most character development we ever got from a Sonic game at the time, and it did so without a single word of dialogue. Honestly, this is peak classic Sonic storytelling, and Knuckles' character is a very easy one to empathize with. Sonic 3D Blast, making the most of the hardware. At a time where everyone wanted to see Sonic's answer to Mario 64, Sega. Getting this as your big Sonic game for the Sega Saturn was underwhelming to say the least. But people forget this game was developed for the Sega Genesis, and was only ported to the Saturn because Sonic Extreme got cancelled. And when you see it like that, it's easier to forgive a lot of its shortcomings. The most 3D a 16-bit console could really do looked like that. But that's not good. So the decision to make it an isometric 3D platformer makes a lot of sense, and honestly, it looks pretty solid. It's not an actual jump to 3D like the series needed at the time, but for a Genesis game, that's as 3D as you're getting, and I'd say it's pretty impressive for a console that came out in the late 80s. Sonic Adventure, different gameplay styles. Now, the plethora of gameplay styles can be seen as a bad thing because it gives some styles a lot less polish, but it doesn't make the good parts of the game suffer, it just pads the experience. The Sonic story is still phenomenal, some of the best designed levels in the history of the series. The Tails levels, equally really freaking good, and bring in a fun extra objective of beating Sonic to the end. The Knuckles levels, while not my thing, give you a more in-depth look at these areas that Sonic just zoomed through. The E102 Gamma levels, really fun, blow stuff up. The Big and Amy levels kinda suck, but it's not a big deal because you're not forced to play any of them. You can enjoy all of Sonic's levels by playing just his story. You don't have to deal with being interrupted by these slower and sometimes less fun levels for the sake of progression like some later games make you do. And if you absolutely despise one of these playstyles, you can ignore it. It's not like the Werehog or Mech levels where you have to complete them to move on. They're just there if you want more content, and I absolutely love that about them. Sonic Adventure 2, Story. The Sonic and Shadow levels are peak Sonic gameplay, but I think the story stands out as the biggest highlight. Sure, there's a lot of plot points that are kinda dumb, and some things just make no sense, but it finds the balance between being a super silly and super serious narrative, and it rides that line almost flawlessly. I don't know if it did so on purpose, because a lot of the funniest moments were probably not intended to be, but Ryan Drummond's high-pitched, cartoony Sonic voice and the colorful cast makes the story feel really fun. While there are more serious elements like the fucking moon getting blown up and Shadow's not girlfriend Maria dying, it still finds a way to feel really lighthearted. Where every other Sonic game either takes itself too seriously or swoops down to all-time lows to make little kids laugh, this one hits it right on the mark. Honorable mentions go to the first adventure and Unleashed though. The Sonic Advance Trilogy, Character Selection. I always group these games together because, I'll be honest, I've only played a little bit of the first one, but the best thing I've gathered about them is the star-studded playable character lineup. You get Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Cream the Rabbit, so you can play through the main game as whoever your favorite character is, and I really like that. Sonic Heroes, the team mechanic. Another choice that's really predictable, but once again, can you really blame me? The team mechanic in Sonic Heroes is what makes the game memorable in the first place. It takes the idea of characters having their own unique attributes and being able to reach new routes because of them, and makes that a central part of the gameplay, which works really well. Now instead of going back to levels as a new character, you can make a quick switch to reach those paths. And these abilities are actually mandatory to use in unison in order to reach the end of most levels, and it's awesome. It's not perfect, but no gameplay style is on the first time around. It's just a shame we never got a sequel that fully polished and fleshed this idea out. Shadow the Hedgehog, multiple endings. The fact that the game makes you get all the multiple endings is dumb, but the idea of your actions in the stage affecting the way the story plays out is super cool. The good guys and bad guys are both spewing orders at you throughout the game, and whatever objectives you decide to complete change both how the level is played and how the plot unfolds, which I would love to see implemented in a more traditional Sonic game that doesn't have guns and cursing. Sonic Rush, the boost mechanic. This game introduced the boost style of gameplay, and it handles a lot better in 2D than it does in most of the 3D games that came after. That's mainly because the 2D perspective is much easier to maneuver and platform in, and therefore lends itself to supersonic speed a lot better. Where 3D boost games have a lot of these hallway sections and had to incorporate things like the quick step to compensate for Sonic's bad traction and maneuverability, this game being 2D is much more simple to control and maintains the feeling of high speed without compromising actual gameplay. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, level design. Yes, I clickbaited you with 06's story being the best thing, but I will touch on that because the story isn't nearly as bad as it's made out to be. It is super confusing and way too dark for essentially a kid's game, I'll give you that, but Silver is a really good character, Amy has one of her best portrayals, and the Sonic Shadow rivalry is in full effect. Yes, the kiss is kinda weird, and Eggman looks like rancid poo-poo, I know, but at least it tried something new and was actually somewhat entertaining. Anyways, the level design. This is the final entry to feature the adventure style of gameplay, so you already know I dig it. Instead of the 2D, 3D hybrid stages that Boost style is known for, this game offers full 3D environments that maintain a feeling of speed while providing more room to explore and discover faster routes. It's not as open-ended as Adventure 1's levels, but isn't as linear as Adventure 2's either. It finds a really nice middle ground that honestly, without the bugs and god-awful loading screens breaking the immersion, could be great. I didn't say good, I said great. Sonic Rush Adventure soundtrack. The Sonic series is loaded in the music department, and while there is a handful of soundtracks I prefer to this one, it's the best thing this game has going for it. How they managed to get this level of audio quality out of the DS, I'll never understand. But it's all very upbeat, high energy, and feel good, and that's exactly what I look for in video game music. Sonic Unleashed, the graphics. In about a year, we'll be further from this game's release than the original Sonic the Hedgehog was in 2008. Translation, this game old. But it's still somehow the most beautiful game the series has to offer. The opening cinematic is gorgeous, and same with the other animated cutscenes. They put more effort here than they've done for any other Sonic narrative. Probably even the movies, if I'm being honest. The animations are so fluid, the characters are so expressive, and the worlds are stunning. Each of these areas is based off a real-world location, and you can just tell they put so much attention and care into doing each of them justice. Whether it's through the music, the architecture, or the locals, this game was committed to translating our world to Sonic's, and it bleeds into every aspect of the game in the best possible way. The only negative was honestly the optimization, but now, with the Series X being able to run it in full HD at 60 FPS, you can enjoy it in its fully realized glory, and I'd highly recommend it. Both episodes of Sonic 4 being playable on smartphones. When you look at this game as an evolution of classic Sonic, it's kinda depressing. But when you realize it was primarily designed to play on a smartphone back in 2010, it's a lot easier to not hate. It misses the mark both as a modern Sonic game and as a classic Sonic game, and just looks and feels so weird, especially that first episode, but compared to Angry Birds and Temple Run, it's a more substantial gaming experience, I'll give it that. Sonic Colors, level themes. I wanted to give this title to Unleashed, but this game needs a positive more, so we're rolling with it. Sonic Colors features this interstellar amusement park built by Eggman, and each world hones in on certain attractions and power sources. While the graphics were super watered down, because it's still so cool to run through this colorful amusement park, these tasty dessert lands, ride on these deadly roller coasters, and see Eggman's mechanization clash with the natural beauty of Planet Wisp. I really don't like the Wisp transformations, but that's okay, because the vastness of space mixed with a tropical metropolis is a visual treat. Sonic Generations, the quality standard of modern Sonic. Every Sonic game, yes, even the good ones, have some stages that I don't enjoy. Some are terribly designed and others just have stupid gimmicks. But this game, or more specifically, its modern half, doesn't have a single one. It goes banger after banger, and while it features a shorter playtime than most Sonic games, I'll take a smaller selection of cherry-picked courses over more content at the expense of quality. Sonic Lost World, cartoony art style. Where Unleashed had a beautiful, semi-realistic world, this game goes fully in the direction of a cartoon. Sonic's running animation is a figure eight, all the generic platforming tropes are given this very Sonic-feeling adaptation, and everything looks very simplified yet bubbly. It looks super polished and clean, kinda like Super Mario 3D World, where it's not a graphical showcase, but will stand the test of time. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Humor. I love the Sonic Boom cartoon, and while the game suffers just about every issue it possibly could, a lot of the jokes still land. It carries over the character traits and writing style of the show with a super satirical and self-aware tone that makes it simple for kids to understand, but still funny in a stupid kind of way. Sonic Mania. Bosses. Classic Sonic bosses are usually pretty good. They'll take whatever level gimmick and apply it to an enemy battle scenario in a really fresh way, and this game's no exception. But I'd argue it's done better here than in any other Sonic game, simply because of how distinct each and every fight is. You go from a high-speed chase through Studiopolis to a Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine ripoff, and from a trash compactor to Eggman in a scuba suit while you have a big mech. It's all really creative, and you never know what to expect. Sonic Forces, nothing. I'm kidding. Environment progression. Where most Sonic games tell don't show when it comes to Eggman's effect on the environment, this game makes you feel Eggman's impact through the environment building, kinda like Sonic CD does. Sure, it starts off in Green Hill, but you get to watch it slowly lose color and life, and a few stages later, you get to this decimated city that's burning to the ground because of Eggman's invasion, which really drives home the fact that Eggman won, and the good guys are massive underdogs to the situation. Even some of the best Sonic games, like Adventure and Unleashed, fail to convey the severity of the situation through its levels, so it is probably the only nice thing I'll ever say about Sonic Forces. Sonic Frontiers, a clear focus. I haven't been the nicest at this game since launch, because I'm not too big a fan of these massive open world games, but I do gotta give it some credit because it did exactly what it set out to. These big areas are filled to the brim with unique enemies and obstacles to overcome, and it's a strong first attempt at this type of game for the series. And I especially like how they introduced a change of pace without introducing a new gameplay style. These cyberspace levels provide a really different feeling experience compared to the main game, but you still have the same moveset and mechanics, so it really just helps you sharpen your skills and keep a playthrough feeling fresh. Sonic Superstars, multiplayer. In every other Sonic game, it seems like multiplayer's an afterthought, and while it can still be fun, here you can tell the game was built with intent to play with other people. From the very start, you can choose to play as Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, or Amy, and a second through fourth player can make that same decision. It's not perfect, but no multiplayer in a platforming game is, and it's sure as hell better than the multiplayer in Mario Wonder, which is kinda surprising considering how fast-paced this game is, but it's 100% true. And at the time of making this, Sonic X Shadow Generations is still a few weeks out, but I did get the chance to play it at Summer Game Fest, and I'd say the best thing about the Shadow Generations half is the Chaos Control mechanic. When I realized you were supposed to freeze these projectiles into a line to form a bridge to run across, I fell in love with it, and I can't wait to see how they fully flesh it out. But there you have it, a way too critical Sonic fan saying something nice about every single game. If you have any different picks or thoughts to expand on, definitely drop a comment. I try my best to respond to as many as possible. And if you're a big Sonic the Hedgehog fan, definitely subscribe to this channel for more content just like this, and check out the video on screen that I know you'll enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and please have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you later.